As Chinese espionage cases continue to rise in Taiwan, the National Security Bureau estimates some 5,000 spies have been operating across government. They go right to the heart of the country's establishment, including the presidential office. What do these spy operations reveal about Beijing's intent, and how much invisible infiltration is Taiwan still facing? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Yin Khvat. Joining us today are Chen Fangyu, Soochow University Political Science Assistant Professor, and John Eastwood, Eiger Law Senior Partner. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. The National Security Bureau says that though the majority of spy cases uncovered in Taiwan have so far involved the military, civilian government departments are just as compromised. The higher detection rates within the military are due to counterintelligence capabilities that are absent from administrative offices. So far, for every 4 cases detected within the military, just 1 case has been uncovered within civilian government. Recent high-profile cases include staffers Wang Renbin and Wu Xiangyu within the presidential office, Zhang Quying, aide to former president of the House, Liu Shikun, and He Zhenjie, assistant to National Security Council Secretary General Joseph Wu when he was Taiwan's foreign minister. However, these Chinese espionage operations represent only the tip of the iceberg, the Bureau says. Let me come to you first, Professor Chen. So how do you assess that 5,000 figure, and why do you think the National Security Bureau came out with it?
You see that in these cases, they have already infiltrated in the government for a very long time. I think the National Security Bureau has already done a lot of different investigations into these cases. However, it is a dilemma for the NSB whether to tell everyone about this, because sometimes if the government telling people about this, then it may be questioned that, well, are you lying to people? Are you just bragging everything? I think this is a good time because under this very long-term investigations, and also we see a rise of the China threat. And I think it is now to let more people know about this.
So it's more about public awareness, yes, you would say? And how about also within the government itself?
Yes, I think so, because it is always the case, and the NSB and other institutions are always having this kind of preventions and other measures, and we have our own intelligence units as well. So this is time, I think, because the government is now promoting for the so-called the national defense capability and also the whole society approach. So it's time to let more people know about this.
Okay. John, a Global Taiwan Institute report recently said no other democracy faces the same scale of foreign threat to its integrity and independence as Taiwan. The malign intentions and influence operations directed by the CCP and the threat it poses and harm it causes to Taiwan's democratic society is real. But, you know, we know that nearly every country spies and nearly every country is spied on. So what's the difference with Taiwan?
I think it's fascinating because you have, classically, 95% of the information that you need to know about an adversary or about another country is available through publicly available sources. And it's that last 5% by quantity, not necessarily quality, because the quality of that last 5% is the really important stuff that you need to know about, the decision makers and what way they're going to go, how it's going to frame all the rest of that 95% that you've gathered through the media and through in an open society like Taiwan. That is particularly important. Now, one thing you see with a lot of the recent cases is that it's not just about getting information, it's also about trying to get commitments, commitment from military people not to act or perhaps to switch sides, or the case involving a theft of a helicopter. The idea of trying to get people to flip and to change over and to do something affirmatively for the mainland Chinese.
Right, okay, so influence operations, recruiting politicians and high senior officials. So going on to exactly that, Professor Chen, let's establish the goals of Chinese espionage. How would you summarize, what is the overriding goal of all of this espionage?
Well, what makes Taiwan a unique case for China is that there's ambition of unification by China. To Taiwanese people, unification is kind of annexation for the territory. So an annexation of the territory is always the highest level of the enemy in the international relations. So we think that it's always the end goal is to unify Taiwan without paying a lot of efforts like a war, a real war, or even it goes to armed conflict. Then with this all of the intelligence collected by the Spies and others measures, then it can make easier for China to beat Taiwan.
To make that political or military takeover more successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So John, obviously, when we think about the military espionage in the military, you know, we can imagine that's to do with learning about Taiwan's military readiness. But when we're talking about spies targeted, for instance, at the Speaker of the House, Yoshi Kun, the Foreign Minister, what kind of information, you know, in sort of practical examples are we talking about?
Well, I think it's the framework. You know, it's their framework of thinking. It's the framework of you know, how they will make decisions going forward. To what point are there going to be their pressure points? But the other thing, and what creates real vulnerability for elected officials and their staffers, is information about their failings. You know, money owed, financial problems, issues that they have professionally, failed ambitions. And so for these people, you know, it's a huge deal. It's their vulnerabilities. And if you look at China, they're the masters of relationshipology. This kind of guanxi shui is a phrase that they use, or the study of relationships and how to spot someone's needs and how to address them. And that's an incredible tool that they can bring to bear, you know, upon a society that's as open as Taiwan's.
Hold that thought. Before we go into more detail of the cases, let's briefly step back to into history, to the Chinese Communist Long March from 1934 to 1935 to understand the roots of Chinese intelligence today. It was a massive military retreat of up to 100,000 troops to escape destruction by the Chinese nationalist or Kuomintang forces led by Chiang Kai-shek. The communists succeeded in traveling 10,000 kilometers on foot from Jiangxi province in the south of China to Shanxi province in the north, though their numbers were decimated by the end of it. Now, key intelligence figure Kang Sheng, who set up China's first secret police service, learned hardcore skills during the march as he directed from behind the scenes in Russia. And many of the foundations of China's latest intelligence institutions, like the MSS or Ministry of State Security, trace their roots to tactics refined during the Long March. Professor Chen, let me ask you then, so give us a picture then of why it was such a formative event for Chinese intelligence.
Well, actually, first of all, we want to mention that the Long March is actually a long exile, not a march. I mean, it is a Chinese propaganda, and they are very good at this. So they turned this, we say that turning a funeral into a happy event. So that is their miserable event, but they turn out to be a great story or great propaganda. So it is a failure of their competition with KMT, and then this into this kind of long march. However, there's a key turning point of CCP. So CCP is very successful at the intelligence system. So it breaks through the KMT's intelligence system and successfully infiltrate into KMT's army and also KMT organization.
And how did they do that?
Oh, they do a lot of it. Like they have a lot of spies and espionage success. So they replace some of the high-level officials with the CCP members. So they are quite successful of this. And then they even killed some of the high-level officials in KMT's the intelligence system. And then it is a turning point of, because if you lose the whole intelligence system, you become very blind in the war. Yeah. So KMT just failed in the civil war.
Right, and I think Professor Chen summed that up, sort of intelligence means or equals survival. John, it was a matter of life or death, wasn't it, for the CCP?
Yeah, I think when you look at the Long March, it's formative. It also comes against a backdrop If you look at like the Romance of the Three Kingdoms of the Sangguo Yanyi, and you look at basically you have Liu Bei, the hero, you have Guan Yu, another one of his brothers, and yet they both ended up working for Cao Cao for a period of time. And nobody was quite as bad as Lu Bu, but you know, you have these characters long-standing out of just like 600 years of history by the time we even get to the Civil War in China. But even, you know, even as of after World War II, you have things like Chen Yi, the former military governor of Taiwan during the 228, you know, civil rights and human rights abuses. And when he gets booted out of Taiwan and sent over to Zhejiang province, one of the first things he ends up doing is running over to try to switch sides to the communists. He gets caught, and then he got brought back to Taiwan, where he was executed.
So a lot of recruitment or switching of sides, survival through secrecy and deception. Professor Chen, how can we see CCP espionage in Taiwan as an example today in the light of those beginnings?
Well, we have already seen a lot of cases that in wartime or in the peace, even in the peacetime, you can try to buy some of the loyalties from your enemy, so that in some necessary cases, then the enemy, I mean your spies, can help you. So we see a lot of cases there. So right now we see the CCP is trying a lot to attract our military personnel and also government officials and even the policemen, and so that they can maybe help CCP in some key events.
Yeah, and John, to survive this long march, what we know is that they had to build up these networks of informants and plant false narratives and rely heavily on the local sympathizers, which is what Professor Chen was saying. Does the history in any way explain the scale and sophistication of Chinese intelligence today? I mean, it's supposed to be the biggest operation in the world by far.
Well, the tools, of course, have gotten a lot better. And if you figure that, you know, for example, the household registration information for pretty much all of Taiwan already went out onto the dark, you know, web. And if you figure that, you know, one of the big warnings, of course, that's given to recruits now is to avoid any kind of gambling involvement, including online gambling, because, you know, the ability to collect information, who knows what website, you know, information is going off to China. So if you're a 20-something of military age, the location data from when you log on goes through, demonstrates that you're probably at a military base. And so the ability for these sites to collect that information and to feed that over, to find these vulnerabilities, such as big gambling losses, to find out about owing people money, or even just the way in which we see time and again, whether it's in Hong Kong or in Taiwan, this very close affiliation of organized crime together with this kind of fifth column of Chinese agents.
Yeah, that is a fascinating link between that, even though obviously Beijing likes to try to distance itself from criminal organizations. But since we last reported the cases of presidential office guards, more details have emerged from the courts. Retired guard Sun Hanfan, who served for former presidents Jiang Jingguo and Li Denghui, was recruited after retirement in China. Sun was paid more than $1,500 every month, with large bonuses for obtaining highly classified materials. Sun recruited his nephew and guard Wang Wenyan, serving then President Tsai Ing-wen and previously Mine Zhou and Chen Shui-bian. Wang procured names, ranks, job descriptions and telephone numbers of top personnel in charge of security arrangements at the presidential office, as well as daily security guard rotations and details. Trips to Bali, Singapore and South Korea were additional perks to Sun from 2008 to 2016. In another case, Wu Shangyu, a consultant to the presidential office, allegedly passed on information about Lai Ching-te's itineraries, including details of presidential visits to allied nations. Wu had previously worked under Lai in the vice president's office. Professor Chen, former CIA analyst Peter Mattis, who co-authored that GTI report I quoted from, said the CCP is focused on Taiwan's military police command and presidential security detail, and he believes that CCP has used this information gathered to essentially create special forces mock-ups of the presidential office. So does that kind of detail really help to bring this whole thing to life? What we're really talking about is perhaps how Beijing wants to take out the head of our country.
I'm not surprised to see this report because many years ago we have already seen that Beijing has the ability to have mark up our military bases and also mark up our Air Force bases everywhere. So we see the exact same copy of for example, Taichung Qinchuangang Airport in China somewhere.
But now they have all the personnel that are responsible for keeping these places safe. Their phone numbers, their locations, their rotations.
I do believe that these cases are quite real. I mean, the threat is quite real. So for example, my personal experience and some of my friends also experienced that some people online will send them emails that with details about me and my family members.
What kind of details, if it's okay to ask you, do they have?
Address, my IDs, and and my birthday, and this kind of information, so that they can target some of the key activists in Taiwan. Also, they can target the military personnel very easily, so that they can reach out to you, and then maybe, just as John mentioned, that they can give you some of the benefits, so that to recruit you, to help them. So I think it is quite pervasive right now, so that these cases should be known by everyone, so that this is a real threat.
So as a wake-up call for, as you said, whole of society. John, does the extra detail of what we've heard from these latest espionage cases, do they change our understanding of the situation?
I think one of the things that we see with, for example, with the Russian war, one of the first things they tried to do was to take out Zelensky. And the idea of a decapitation strike is a thing that we saw how important Zelensky turned out to be to the defense of Ukraine. When offered a chance to get out, he stuck with the country. He says, I don't need a taxi ride. He stayed there, and he's become just this force beyond what anyone would have expected from a former comedian. And if you isolate or decapitate the leadership in Taiwan, of course, that's a well-established game plan that Russia has already tried.
Right. And Professor Chen, so leading on from that, from these plots, and then also something else, which was what Admiral Samuel Paparo, US Indo-Pacific commander, had called the Chinese military exercises around Taiwan not exercises but rehearsals. Can we draw any conclusions about Beijing's intent rather than capability?
Well, to me, that the intention is quite clear, that they are trying everything. They are practicing rehearsals, a lot of different ways to take over Taiwan.
But you do admit that a lot of people talk about simply they're building up capability. They say that all militaries around the world build up these capabilities.
No, I don't think so, because I think these two are quite similar to each other, and we are highly related to each other. Because if you are, firstly, you have to have this intention, and then you practice, you have this ability. So they are quite the same. So not every country in the world is practicing to conquer or using armed force against others' territory. Like Taiwan, we don't do this. We only do the self-defense, right? We don't have any intention nor ability to attack other countries. So
the US does, though. They actually have an offensive strategy.
The US is a hegemon. It's not the same. I mean, Taiwan, there's no question that we don't need this kind of intention nor the ability to do so. The only way we need is to defend against a potential China's armed conflict. So it is quite clear for Taiwan that there's no reason that we delay any kinds of defense.
Right. Yep. Now, President Lai Ching-te recently announced that Democratic Progressive Party officials and staff members will be required to report any planned travel to China amid revelations of Chinese spies within his ruling party. Lai sent this message to his ruling party members. The DPP was created in an era of authoritarian dictatorship and serves as the driving force of Taiwan's democracy. We must hold ourselves to a high standard. He said that those who spurn the DPP's core values and betray the country for personal gain must be met with the harshest penalties by law and their party, together with condemnation from society. John, so Lai is clearly not happy. What do you make of this language?
Taiwan was not gifted its democracy, so I understand why he values this. This wasn't like after World War II when the Allies went and rewrote the German and Japanese constitutions for them. Taiwan ended up being put under from one autocracy over to another autocracy. And its democracy was homegrown over the course of 40 years of martial law and the sacrifice of tens of thousands of Taiwan citizens. So I think when you look at like the amount of heartbreak that families went through, having their relatives arrested, spending years in prison just for speaking out, the amount of repression that they underwent during the Chiang Kai-shek years, then I think, I understand how President Lai could get emotional about this and to be shocked that anyone would give this up. Democracy was gained at such a high price over such a long period of time that for someone to be willing to give it up is just crazy.
Professor Chen, so in your view, are the cases a reflection of an erosion of DPP values, or the intensity of CCP's efforts, or something else?
Well, I think for these cases of spies, material interest is always one of the main driving forces, but not the only one. So we see a lot of cases of these spies that behind them, maybe their families are maybe threatened by CCP or other institutes that you recruit the spy. And also sometimes it's a driving force is about your self-identity. So, for example, some people still believe in a great Chinese, the great China as something that they should pursue for greater levels of the national achievement, something like that.
But you're not talking about the DPP members on that particular point, though.
No, I think it's always a mixture. So even in the inside the DPP, there are different factions, different people there, and some people they are maybe in the beginning they joined DPP not because of their ideas, but maybe because of their political calculations, because they can seek for more political opportunities in DPP rather than other parties.
Especially if it's in government.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Now, John, in April, of course, we know Lai announced 17 wide-ranging measures because he wanted to tackle Chinese influence operations. And one of those measures was to bring back military courts. Human rights and democracy activists have criticized this move. But can you give us a picture of what the situation is in the US? Some people say that Taiwan should be pursuing much harsher penalties like the US.
Yeah, I think if you look at the reality of how the U.S. pursues these things. If somebody in the U.S. were to spy for a foreign country, even a nominal ally, and in the case, of course, we had a U.S. Navy serviceman who spied for Israel. We have had various people within the CIA who have, and those guys get life sentences. In fact, they are usually not executed because potentially they could be traded for someone in the future. That's their only way they're going to ever get out, is to go spend the rest of their life living in another country that will take them. So the idea that spies and traitors would, be able to get off lightly with the kind of 1 year, 3 months, 5 years, 7 years kind of thing like that is absolutely crazy. But that's the situation where Taiwan law is at. Even in the United States, people with access to secret information who leak things out to the press. So Chelsea Manning or Reality Winner, those guys. Chelsea Manning got 35 years. Reality Winner got over 5, and these people leaked out things not to an enemy, but over to the press about things, reports that they had access to, information they had access to that wasn't going to endanger troops. And the U.S. takes that stuff deadly seriously. And it's really important when you consider about a healthy democracy, also defending that democracy. You can't just leave it to being like, oh, you know, it's free speech when they run over with a bunch of secret documents to another military power. Well, the transfer of a helicopter or the transfer, I mean, you know, the penalties have been absurdly low.
Right. And Professor Chan, you know, knowing that, hearing that, how much further does Taiwan actually need to go in order to try to stem this avalanche of espionage in Taiwan?
I totally agree with John that our law needs to be revised in order to get to warn these people who want to do this espionage works to other countries. And I think all of these 17, the so-called wide-ranging measures are not new. So most of them are originated from the 2019 revision of laws.
Is it a reinvigoration of them, though? I mean, if you're saying that they have existed since 2019, shouldn't Taiwan be doing even more then?
Yeah, I think he's trying to push for more executions and to more investigations against these laws. But overall, we do need examination of our law system that maybe to revise some of the laws. You can take a lot of foreign countries' money to do the media and other activities here without being charged. And can you promote for a armed force unification by China? There's no law to regulate this.
We'll have to end it there. Thank you so much, Sun Fangyu and John Eastwood, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel.